specifically Khalistani terror groups, but is now also platforming them, mainstreaming these individuals. The Canadian state broadcaster CBC has given space to Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, the Khalistan advocate of Sikhs For Justice. You can see him to the right of your screens. This is a grab, viewers, from that show. You all know that this man is committed to the assassination of Indian diplomats, to externing Hindus from North America, and whose speeches, including eulogies to the killers of a former Indian Prime Minister and Chief Minister of Punjab, have been denounced by top-flight Canadian politicians. In an interview given less than 24 hours earlier, Pannun has said, and I quote, SFJ has been sharing evidence with Canada of an Indian spy nexus operating via diplomats. Trudeau's stand is a first step towards justice. Expelling diplomats involved in Nijjar's murder should not be the only action. Indian consulates in Vancouver and Toronto need to be permanently shut down. We must see if Indo-Canadians are truly loyal to the Canadian Constitution. I will continue my campaign for global Khalistan referendum, which is peaceful, to make Indian-governed Punjab a separate nation. We do not recognize the Indian Constitution or judiciary, unquote. Now viewers, apart from wanting dog whistling really against Hindus and other Sikhs of Indian extract in Canada, he also says that he wants to liberate Indian government Punjab. Now viewers, there is a Punjab also in Pakistan. Has Pannun ever talked about liberating Punjab in Pakistan? No viewers, no. He has never. And if anyone with even half an objective bone in their body in Canada would tonight be using their brain, they would realize that he is actually a fall guy, some sort of a string on a puppet on a string for a foreign government, for the Pakistani government. Pannun speaks the language of an extremist committed to the founding of a religious state. His ideals go completely against the ideals of modern, inclusive, secular democracies like Canada. Much like Osama bin Laden, one wonders if the Canadian broadcaster would ever have given a platform to Osama bin Laden in the interest of promoting free speech. Viewers, this man is really rancid, and let me walk you through some of his comments. In 2018, he said, "We will use all means necessary to achieve Khalistan, peaceful or otherwise. India will be broken into pieces. Punjab will be made independent." In September 2023, he says, "Canada has no place for those Indo-Hindus who are siding with India in suppressing the freedom of expression and promoting violence against pro-Khalistan Sikhs." So viewers, Indo-Hindus have no rights. They have no rights. They have no freedom of expression. Kick them out. Worse, kill them, as the SFJ has ordered at one time. November 2023, Sikhs should not fly via Air India on November 19, the day of the World Cup final in Ahmedabad. There will be a global blockade. Don't travel by Air India or your life will be in danger. This is a man who's threatening to blow up airlines. And viewers, it's not as if his threat is without precedent. It has happened. We all know the Kanishka bombing. If more evidence is needed that Canada is not actively plotting to sow the seeds of secession in India, then one doesn't have to look further than the present regime's director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the CSIS, who revealed to a parliamentary inquiry panel that Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI, has been supporting Khalistanis in Canada. These are her words. Any country with an iota of intelligence gathering capacity would be aware that Pakistan has been fanning cross-border terror in India. It does what Iran has been doing to Israel, who, by the way, Canada supports. This is Vanessa Lloyd, director of the Canadian Intelligence Service. Viewers, she says engagement of Pakistan is consistently in balance with trying to reduce the influence of India, influence of Pakistan is directly related to the support of Khalistan extremism, unquote. And viewers, she's not wrong, because as I told you, Pannun never talks about the Punjab that is in Pakistan. It tells you everything. Listen in to Miss Lloyd.
I think, Commissioner, what I would add there is the context that engagement of Pakistan is consistently in balance with trying to reduce the influence of India. And so some of the elements that I mentioned previously about the dynamics between suppressing voices can also have the opposite effect in terms of amplifying other voices. And in this particular case, influence of Pakistan is directly related to support of Khalistani extremism. So there's a different type of voice there, and yet it is also a more limited actor on the broader screen.
Lloyd viewers, Vanessa Lloyd has come out and spilled the beans. This is Trudeau's own intelligence head. And viewers, as we speak, the Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau, is sticking to his charges. He says India has undermined the government and governance. There are clear indications that India has violated our sovereignty, he says. Information was passed to Indian government at the highest level, and then information directed through criminal organizations like the Lawrence Bishnoi gang resulted in violence against Canadians on the ground. We wanted to question Indian diplomats, but they did not waive diplomatic immunity. That is why we had asked them to leave, unquote. Viewers, this is the kind of tripe that is being pushed away. And let me tell you, viewers, he's talking about the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. India has been seeking the extradition of members of the Lawrence Bishnoi gang that are on Canadian soil. Goldie Brar, viewers, he's a partner in crime of Lawrence Bishnoi. Where does he live? He lives in Canada. And then they say that India is using Lawrence Bishnoi to undermine the sovereignty of Canada. Viewers, it is absurd. And it makes one wonder, what exactly is the motivation? Let's open this up. Daniel Boardman, Canadian senior journalist, joins us. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, senior fellow of the IPCS, and Anish Faruqi, journalist, backing Prime Minister Trudeau's stand, also joins us. And I want to begin with you first. Mr. Boardman, what do you make of this platforming of people like Pannun now on mainstream state broadcaster, the CBC, in Canada? Also, Trudeau's stand, his sudden sort of truculence, for the lack of a better word, which goes against the facts.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wish I was surprised by this. I mean, disgusted that we have Pannun on Canadian state broadcasting, not even one of the supposedly private networks, but on the CBC. And he did a good job covering Pannun. I mean, another thing that Pannun did is right after the October 7th terrorist massacre, where 1,200 people were raped and murdered in the most brutal way possible, Pannun made a video the next week saying, this is great, this is what Khalistan needs to do, and this is the pathway towards Khalistan, and this is what we should do to India and to Hindus globally to achieve our goals. So this man then gets to go on the CBC and spout off nonsense. And I said, I wish this could surprise me. But again, for the last year, again, it's the same thing we have with Israel. We have a Western democratic ally that we're supposedly allied with, just like India, yet everything the Canadian media and Trudeau is doing is undermining. This is the same government that received a special thank you from Hamas due to our harassment of our allies at a time of war. So this is sort of a pattern among the Trudeau government where we are now, and I think a lot of people in India are kind of confused by what's happening here and wondering why Canada's taking such a crazy hostile anti-India stance when it can hurt them. And a lot of Canadians would say, okay, well, actually, the philosophy of the Liberals under Trudeau is a very masochistic one, right? You might have heard a lot about woke culture in the West and this and that. One of the fundamental principles is, the fact that our country is founded on evil principles. Our country is fundamentally. Justin Trudeau is a man who got up in front of the country a few years ago and said, we're committing a genocide. He got in front of the country and said, I am currently the active leader of a country currently committing a genocide. Cop to crimes against humanity publicly, and everyone just shrugged it off because no one really took this seriously. But it's one thing if the prime minister applies it to his own country, and that has its own consequences. But when you start to take this worldview and you start to apply it to your allies as well, then you start to get problems, right? You have problems now with Israel, which has led to a rise in anti-Semitism on our streets. And now we're starting to apply the same thing to India, which has led to a wave of violence against the Hindu community here, where they don't feel safe, where temples are vandalized. And Khalistanis feel like they can just roam around the streets with impunity, threatening whoever they want. Right? So again, this is highly disturbing that Pannun is on TV. He's threatening to repeat the Air India bombing. He's threatening this and this and that. He's clearly an extremist. He's being brought on as some sort of, Sikh community leader when he's, a lunatic. And now he's claiming that he's sharing information with the Trudeau government. And to me, this also kind of makes sense because initially these allegations you outline, which are insane and make no sense, to me, I've always said they seem like the fever dream of a lunatic Khalistani in Pannun's organization. Turns out it was from the chief lunatic Khalistani, Pannun himself, who seems to be feeding it. I wouldn't be surprised if we learn in 3 years that the evidence we have is, documents sent by Sikhs For Justice about all their different conspiracy theories around this and that. And these are people who still are trying to offer $5 million. Where they get this money, who knows? It's either Pakistan or China. And they're offering, rewards to find out what really happened at the Air India bombing. And they're going around harassing the victims of the family victims. It's insane, but it's all kind of par for the course under the Trudeau government. If you follow it for the last 10 years, it is an incredibly masochistic government that hates itself, hates its own country, and it is taking this mentality out onto its allies. And again, this is a man who admired the basic dictatorship of China. He says the CCP was his favorite government. And he ran on this in 2015. So is anyone really surprised that the man who admires China's basic dictatorship is conducting foreign policy in a way that aligns with the CCP's worldviews?
Well, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, if you just trace the dots, it all falls into place. This man is now going to be, or at least officials of his government today, are going to present their case before a panel where they will have to defend that they've been soft on China and doing business with China and doing all sorts of other things we don't know about. CCP supports the ISI. The ISI is, of course, Pakistan's go-to dirty tricks department. And, of course, the ISI and Pakistan bankroll Khalistanis, and you have a nice little circle being drawn out here. This man is obviously in trouble, and I'm talking about Trudeau, and now he's trying to wriggle out of this situation by creating distractions.
Rahul, thank you. Good evening. I've actually sent you a very important video on WhatsApp. I wish you could play that, please, for our viewers.
Okay.
The video is from the horse's mouth itself. It's from Justin Trudeau from the parliamentary hearings just a few minutes back. He admits, quote unquote, no, we did not give them any evidentiary proof. It was all intel. Now, it's very important the viewers understand the difference between intel and evidentiary proof. Now, assume I and Daniel are in a plot to kill you. Intel is I called Daniel Boardman several times on my mobile phone. Proof is the wiretap of me discussing with Daniel Boardman that he will pay me, say, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 to kill you. There's a fundamental difference between intel, which cannot be produced in court, which you can't convict on, you can't even arrest on intel, and evidence, which you act on, which is justiciable and can be used in court and is used in court. And this is the main thing. This is why, in all these American cop serials that you see, your rights are read out to you. Anything you can say can and will be used against you. That is the difference between you being apprehended based on intel and convicted based on evidence. All right. Imagine the prime minister of a country who doesn't even know this difference and has been repeatedly saying evidence has been provided. Yesterday, I believe the Deputy High Commissioner said irrefutable evidence had been provided. But then at the end of it, he caveated it saying allegations again. If you notice, even the UK and US government have said allegations, they've said it's serious, and they've said we would prefer if India cooperate. Nobody is even urging India to cooperate at this stage because they know there's no meat out here. As for Gurpatwant, Pannu, Rahul, I'm going to disagree with this panel. Gurpatwant Pannu is a true Indian patriot. I think he's a raw deep state agent because every time he opens his mouth, he validates every single one of India's accusations, be it against Trudeau, be it against CSIS, be it against the RCMP, be it against the Canadian state. Any person wanting to radicalize just needs to watch Pannun's video to collapse into laughter and get de-radicalized. He is a true Indian hero. He deserves the Bharat Ratna because he's put himself in a very dangerous position. He's de-radicalizing Khalistanis through his funny videos. He is validating every allegation that India makes. And I suspect in 1 or 2 years, he's going to come back to India and provide us a treasure trove of information on who his CIA, CSIS, and whatever handlers were. So, my salutes to Gurpatwant Pannu. I don't take the man seriously. I never have. I share his videos all the time because they're hilarious.
Okay. Viewers, look.
And sorry, just last point.
Yeah.
I totally understand because Justin Trudeau is a white version of Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. So, two jokers, two clowns together. It's a fantastic Punch and Judy buffoon show.
Well, viewers, look, we can at some level or the other mock these individuals, but there are serious consequences. If you go through the Western media right now, viewers, there's a complete full-blown attack on India. And Mr. Faruqi, I have to ask you this. If a person, I'm sure you're not one of them, and it would be nice if you clarify, I'm sure you don't think that Hamas was right to have carried out that October 7th dastardly attack on Israel. And if a person stands up and says that Israel deserved it and that Hindus in Canada should be externed, then that person, in my book, and I think in the book of any sensible individual, is a xenophobe. Should a xenophobe be given airtime by the state broadcaster of any nation that conforms to a liberal, democratic, constitutional democracy? And if they are, then what are they but not sponsors of terrorism? So, Mr. Faruqi, is today Canada a sponsor of terrorism and terrorists? Simple question to you.
Well, Rahul, I think Canada is a victim of terrorism right now at the moment. Let me get back to this intel and evidence analogy that I had just put. I don't think all three of you have seen any evidence or any intel that Trudeau and Trudeau's government has given to the Indian officials in Ottawa many times. We attempted to ask for the cooperation from the Indian side and they declined. Multiple times the attempts were made and they declined. And then Mr. Trudeau comes forward and expels those unwanted, quote unquote, people from Canada based on serious evidence by the RCMP. It's not a politically driven agenda. It could have been any prime minister of any country would have done the same that Trudeau has done. Now, I may or may not agree with Justin Trudeau's politics. I may or may not vote him. I may.
No, you said victim. Explain yourself, because let me ask you, Mr. Faruqi, 22 extradition requests have been made by India to get back people who are known to be members of organized criminal gangs, including the Bishnoi gang, yet none of them have been complied with. Why?
It is totally up to the Canadian government to see the evidence.
So here it is, viewers. India is being accused of using criminal gangs to eliminate peaceful Khalistanis, the same criminal gangs that it wants to extradite, which Canada doesn't want to extradite. You can't win this, viewers. This logic is completely inverted. And the people who are not seeing it are either not seeing it because they are committed, or they are in some level or the other cahoots with a very, very ulterior motive. And I want to bring actually once again Iyer Mitra back, because Mr. Mitra, you were talking about this whole business of how Canada itself has shielded terrorists and they claim to be victims today. Could you explain?
Here's the amazing thing. In the dossier we sent to the Canadians were 9 different people. 7 of them were from the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. We sent this dossier to them 4 years back and said, please take action. These are organized criminals. What action did they take? Nothing. Today they come back and tell us, you need to act against the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. You are in cahoots with the gang that we have asked them to arrest in Canada. How do you buy that? Where is Goldie Brad? When Sidhu Moosewala, who is one of the most famous musicians of Punjab, it's a long stretch to call it music, it's more like farting, but whatever. Musicians, quote unquote, of Punjab, gets killed. Goldie Brad sitting there admits
He's done it.
He goes and blares it out, saying, I have done it. And the RCMP can't catch him. They still don't know where he is.
Yeah, so let me bring in
They
Mr.
don't want to
Faruqi
track
on this
him
point.
down.
Mr. Faruqi, what kind of victim of terror protects those that the Indian government wants and who have admitted that they are terrorists carrying out crimes? What kind of victim is this?
I think you guys need to understand one thing.
No, I don't need to understand anything. You need to explain.
Harpreet Singh Nijjar was killed in
Mr. Faruqi,
Vancouver
you need to explain.
by the assassins.
How do you
right?
know that
And
it
those
wasn't done?
links
No,
were
hang on,
established.
just a minute. You're accusing these criminal gangs that India wants
Let's understand one
extracted
thing
and
very clearly. I
extradited.
see
No,
a
one
lot of
second.
sweeping
5,
statements,
6, 7
lot of
years back.
links,
No, excuse me, Mr. Faruqi, please.
irrelevant links.
There is no
of Sidhu
irrelevant link.
Moosewala, and you're just giving all kind of stories, but
No,
not
I think, Mr.
understanding one thing, that
Faruqi,
the
you're on a
evidence
different planet,
is
or
based
you are
on not
in
only
some way or the
Canadian
other.
secret
No,
agencies,
you're
but
some
also
way or
the
the other
Five Eyes
compromised. Now, I
Nation.
have to ask you this question. Please
serious,
explain to the
serious
viewer.
matter. Five Eyes Nation is not a joke.
Look, one second. Now, hang on. Faruqi, 1 second. Mr. Faruqi, give me 30 seconds. Please listen to my question and don't speak over me. There's no point. We're not going to have an intelligent conversation. Just listen to me
No,
once.
but you have to understand. Like
I don't need to understand. You need to answer my question. What kind of country inhibits the repatriation, the extradition of criminals, and then says that the country that is demanding the extradition is using those same criminals to carry out acts of terror? Mr. Boardman, it makes no sense. This is not a victim. This is a sponsor and the shielder of criminal organizations and terrorists. What is there to understand?
Well, I mean, you listen. I certainly understand how people can make that case, and listen, I've made the case quite stridently that the Trudeau government has been incredibly soft on terror. The second worst terrorist attack in Canadian history happened under Justin Trudeau. It was Ukrainian flight PS-752 was shot down by the IRGC intentionally with two missiles fired at it. It was clearly intentional. And the Trudeau government ran cover for the IRGC. The next week, Justin Trudeau met with Javad Zarif, the foreign minister, propaganda minister, and bowed down to him. And the government played the we don't know. They called it an accident. Yes, a country fires 2 missiles at a civilian airliner by accident. So he has run cover for terrorists before. We clearly, this Canadian is a Canadian, even if it's Hardip Singh Jar, even if he's a terrorist, we must protect all Canadians. Listen, I would be willing to get behind that, but I don't believe it. Karima Baloch is the number one example of that, who was probably murdered by the ISI right here in Toronto. But personally, I have a friend who was killed by foreign interference in a hostile foreign
You
power.
do have evidence of that, right? Boardman, for the ISI killing people here? You do, right?
Well, okay, listen. Okay, so what happened is
No, don't give sweeping statement just
okay,
like
so
that.
okay, no, but what happened is okay. He was obviously killed by the
You
ISI
talk
because
about
look, he was
any other nation, you
strangled
should
and then
have
thrown in a
evidence.
river,
Otherwise,
and the
you
Toronto
have no
police
right
called that
to
a suicide.
put an allegation.
He was killed in the same way that many other Pakistani dissidents have been killed in Europe. There was an MO and a pattern. That is
And you
it.
do
He was
have the
killed
evidence,
in
right?
pattern
And then
in the
Khalistan
same
knows
way that
about it,
other
right?
people who have been murdered by the ISI have been murdered internationally. My
Yes,
friend,
and then-
Well,
many
let me
people
just
was
let me
murdered
just
by
settle
the
this
ISI.
debate about
I
whether
lost
it's
the
a
friend.
victim, whether Canada is a victim, or if it's a terror enabler. Viewers, India wanted the extradition of those individuals that carried out the Kanishka airline bombing. Trudeau's father denied us that. And what did they do? They blew up airlines, viewers. This is a fact. In fact, viewers, let me quickly read out what Abhijit Iyer Mitra shared with me. And this is CBC News, May 31st, 2003. And the headline is, CSIS may have had a mole in Air India conspiracy. Documents just released by the RCMP suggest the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service had a mole in the plot to bomb Air India, and they withdrew it so that that individual would not be implicated and thereby also implicate Canada. Viewers, this is a legitimate article put out by the CBC News, the same news that is platforming this man. So you have a state that enables terror, that knows that a terror attack is going to take place and does nothing. And today it has the cheek to call itself a victim. Viewers, this tells you how deeply compromised the man in the middle of your screen is, Justin Trudeau. I need to move on, viewers. Back to domestic news.